Let's go to the Barb's Harley-Davidson Sports Hotline and welcome into the locker room the beat writer for the 76ers for the Philadelphia Inquirer Daily News, Keith Pompey. Good morning, Keith. Happy Father's Day.
Oh, thank you, man. Happy Father's Day to you, and good morning to y'all.
So, Keith, this team has us on a roller coaster. A lot of people thought that the Sixers would do away with the Hawks in maybe 5 or 6 games. Now we're looking,
a lot of people. You,
you said
not
six,
me.
You said 6.
All right, I did say
I
6.
said 5. You said 6.
All right.
A lot of other people say 2, but it's not. It obviously hasn't worked out that way. And now we're looking at a game 7, backs against the wall. And in your article, you stated that all time the Sixers are 6-10 in game 7s, but 5-1 at home.
Yeah,
so
and they won 4 in a row.
Oh yeah, he added another stat on top. They've won 4 in a row.
And they won 4 in a row.
So Keith, how you feeling about tonight?
I don't really know. I mean, typically it's one of those things when sometimes I go to a game and I typically have a feel like, all right, I think the Sixers have this, or they don't have a chance, right? This one is kind of like a new territory to me, just because when you look at the 76ers, those 2 games they lost, games 4 and 5. I mean, there was a point in that game where you thought they had it locked up, and then all of a sudden, the other team came back, and then the start of game 6. You're looking at it and you're like, oh my gosh, the Sixers about to get blown out. And then the Sixers come back and win. So, this has been a bizarre second round series to me, just because, I mean, when you also look at it, the road team has been more successful than the home team. So, I really have a tough time getting a pulse on this game, on how it's going to be tonight.
And of course, the Sixers went 29-7 in the regular season at home. They've been pretty dominant over the last couple years at home. The Philadelphia crowd, I think, is the best crowd in the NBA. I know I'm biased, but all signs. I mean, I said the other night, if the Sixers can win Game 6, I think they win Game 7.
Yeah, I mean, now that's the momentum, because when you look at it right now, you could have Atlanta saying, you know what, we let a golden opportunity slip away, right? Then you also have the thing about Bogdanovich has a sore knee. He may be a little gimpy. But at the same time, this is a young team, and they're looking at it like, hey, we don't care. All they want to do is they want to end the Sixers season. Like after they won Game 5, all you heard from Trae Young was like, yep, we don't have any All-Stars. We do not have any MVPs, Defensive Players of the Year. We just go out there and play. So, you would think the momentum is on the Sixers side, but at the same time, when you have a young team like this that has nothing to lose, it can be a scary situation, because at the end of the day, the pressure is all on the Sixers. Yeah. Hawks are like, we're the 5th seed. This Sixers team has an opportunity to be in the first team to make the conference finals since 2001. So all the pressure is on the Sixers.
You mentioned Joel Embiid. He's not 100% healthy, obviously, and the knee was such a conversation piece. But are you just stunned sometimes, Keith, of what Embiid's been able to do on less than 100% of his body?
You know what? That's a great question. I mean, like, when has and this isn't a knock on Joel, but I guess it tells you the type of person he is. When has he been 100% healthy? Like from the day he was drafted, he's been hurt. And so we go out there and we're used to seeing him perform, and then we later find out like, hey, he was gimpy, or we know of all the times he was injured. The thing is, I will say this: when the word came out that he had a slight tear in his meniscus, I was like, wow, it's going to be doom and gloom. Then he walks on the court. He didn't play in that game, but he walks on the court and he does that workout, and you're like, well, why can't he play tonight? You know what I mean? I mean, he just looked like that. So, it's to a point where he doesn't want to use it as an excuse. And I know, like, he falls on the ground, and every time he does that, everyone has a heart attack. But it's like to a point now, like, I'm just used to him always being banged up and playing when he can play with it. So, I'm not amazed anymore. But but I think he'll do well tonight.
So if he's Batman, then the Robin is Ben Simmons. And, do you think there's been some conversation about him in the last couple of games? I mean, my goodness, talk about you either love him or hate the guy, and yet Ben Simmons is a constant storyline. How do you think the starting rotation goes tonight? Is Maxey work his way in? I'm firing 3 questions at you at once, but really Ben Simmons is the one that I want you to talk about.
Nah, I think Ben's still going to start. And I know like one of my colleagues, he wrote a column today about Maxey should be in the starting lineup, and he raises a great question. That's something that everybody wants to see what Doc Rivers is going to do. Doc Rivers is going to go with the same lineup. I mean, you look at it and you see Maxey. He came off the bench. He provided a spark. I think it's one of those things you want that to continue. Secondly, Ben Simmons is an all-star. You don't want to bench him in the biggest game or bring him off the bench in the biggest game of the season. You want to at least show some confidence. I think he deserves that. Now, in regards to Ben, the thing about Ben is, the things that Ben Simmons is doing or the things that his struggles his struggles are something that we've known about for years. I mean, we know that he shies away from shooting the ball. We know that he struggles at the foul line. It gets magnified in the playoffs because in the playoffs, people exploit it. They go to the hack of Ben. You rarely see that in the regular season game. And, I think that the struggles are mental. We all know that. But I think that it is affecting his team right about now just because of, they're having these leads and then they go to hack a Ben. And then all of a sudden the other team starts coming back. The Sixers are rushing shots. I think that, he has to get out of that funk.
We're talking with Keith Pompey, the Sixers beat writer for the Inquirer Daily News. Keith, you because of the COVID, you haven't been able to be around the players like you normally would. And so therefore it has kind of made your job a little bit more difficult because you don't get to see, like, walk around the locker room or interact with the players that you normally would. Do you think that has any effect on, like, the players are more insulated from the people because of the situation? We're not getting a true read on what's going on.
Yeah, it has some. Yeah, that's true. I mean, because yeah, you're right. Because a lot of times you get there and you don't even have to say anything to anyone. You're just there.
Right.
You know what I mean? You can see it. You can sense it. You can get a vibe of it. Yeah, and I think it has a lot. I also think that it could also have a negative impact on how people are being portrayed as well.
Yeah, that's true.
Like, for instance, you guys, been in this business for a long time. So, like, a lot of times a coach will say something in a press conference, but then
he'll do
he
something,
pulls you to the side, and then he tells you what's really going on. You know what I mean? And this is one of these situations where everyone's getting is the press conference talk, and you're not getting the background on it, and it just comes across differently.
Well,
so yeah,
and Keith, because let's face it, Doc Rivers came out in a couple interviews after games 4 and 5, and being a big defender of Ben Simmons, said he's not gonna pull his All-Star. And then what's he do in Game 6?
Sets him.
He sets him.
Had to.
Yeah, exactly. And that's that's one of those things where you guys always know. Like, sometimes I talk to reporters, like younger ones, and they're always like, "Hey, I got to go with the coach." I said, "Nah, you don't. And they're like, "What do you mean?" I'm like, "Dude, I'm telling you, I understand what you're saying, but you got to follow his actions instead of his words, right? Because then you're going to be like, oh, I can't believe the coach did that." Now, at the end of the day, Doc Rivers knows that he has to win this thing. And, he's going to put all the confidence. He's going to be very confident in Ben Simmons. But at the end of the day, he knows when it's not working, you have to pull the trigger, so to speak. And he's done that. And because he knows at the end of the day, the question isn't going to be, hey, Ben Simmons missed those shots. Well, we all knew he was going to miss them. The question is going to be, why did the coach leave him in there when they knew he was going to miss them?
So, Keith, earlier in the show, I made some reference to Doc Rivers over the last 10 years. I mean, he 2009, 10, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. He's lost leads.
Yeah.
Like, he's overdue to break this streak. But
I mean, he did win a championship
Well, he
before,
did
too.
win-
It's
I
not like
know.
he hasn't hoisted the Larry O'Brien trophy. But
I know.
unfortunately, I guess what Billy's saying, Keith and I would agree with this, is more of the narrative about Doc
Yeah.
is the can't get it done than the can get it done. Do you think that's something that he's aware of and weighs on him?
Oh, of course, definitely, definitely. I mean, he put it this way. This is a defining moment, not just for the 76ers, is also a defining moment for Doc Rivers. Because especially, let's be real, the Clippers made it to the Eastern Conference Finals without Kawhi Leonard, right? He didn't play the last two games and they won that one. So what people are going to look at it and they're going to say, okay, well, they're going to bring up the stat that you brought up, Billy, like blowing all these leads, and they're going to be like, well, the Clippers made it, but Doc still lost with the best team in the Eastern Conference, right? Best record. So yeah, it's defining for him, just like it is for Joel, Ben, Tobias, the Sixers organization. Is also a defining moment for Doc Rivers. He has to do it.
There it is. There's the headline from the Keith Pompey,
Yeah.
the headline of the Inquirer today.
Oh, you're going to give him the whole paper. Hey, Keith, before we let you go, because I sense that Billy's going to wrap this up, I got to give a tip of the cap to a few of your colleagues. Les Bowen, I know, took the buyout and put the announcement up yesterday, I believe. My man Frank Fitzpatrick, who wrote so many great columns in that Sunday paper and so many historical things.
We had Ed
right?
Barkowitz on my show yesterday.
Right, and he surprised Billy afterwards and said, "Oh yeah, by the way, you're not going anywhere on us, are you, Keith? You gotta keep working away there for us, buddy, right?"
Yeah, I have an 8-year-old, so no, she's 10 now. She's about to kill me. Daddy, I'm 10. Like I have a 10-year-old, so I need to continue to make this money as long as they allow me to. And look, one of South Jersey's finest, like Mark Narducci's taking a buyout too.
Oh wow, I didn't know about that.
Yeah, so it's a sad time, losing a lot of these guys who, let's face it, when I first came back to Philly, I'm from the Philly area, but I moved away and came back. These were all guys I looked up to, and now they're all leaving, and it's kind of sad for me, not to go into work next year when we go back to work and not see them in the office. So that's going to be sad.
Well, Keith, you've always reminded me of the younger, nicer Mike Bruton. You remember Mike Bruton that wrote back in the day? Mike and I would mix on the Temple beat, and he'd always kind of look at me like, "Who the hell are you, kid?" But of course, I also scooped the beat writer M.G. Missinelli one time. I kicked his butt. I beat him on a story. He yelled at me because he was going to get fired because some Temple News kid was scooping him. So
really?
that's a little personal. Really? Yeah, that was I never told you that? Oh, yeah, that was a highlight of mine. I beat him on a Temple football story, and who would be the old Inquirer editor back then? He basically called up that MG and said, "Dude, you're letting a college kid beat you. What's going on?" That was me.
Yeah, that's great, man. I like hearing stuff like that. I mean, it's good.
All right, Keith, can you give us a prediction for tonight?
I think the Sixers do win this one. I do. I think that the fact that the Sixers were booed, the way they were booed in Game 5, and I think the team, the players know they got to play better. They know they have to be focused. I think right now they know that a lot of people's legacy is going to depend on this game, because as great as Joel Embiid is, they're going to say you can't get your team out of the second round. Doc Rivers, the stuff that you brought up. And I think that Ben Simmons has a better performance, and so does Tobias Harris. I think the Sixers win this game.
All right, Keith, thank you so much. We really appreciate you giving us a preview of tonight's game. Thank you so much. Happy Father's Day, and we'll do it again.
All right, thank you, and thank you guys for having me on your show. I really enjoyed it.
Yep, good stuff out of Keith Pompey
There he
there.
is, Keith Pompey on the Barb's Harley Davidson Sports Hotline.